Now, in the ayah, it is also mentioned that in these 3 times, the children and the servants must be taught to seek permission. However, outside of these times, they are allowed to come in without permission, without knocking on the door, especially if the door is open, and if the door is closed, then they must seek permission. But remember that once people have reached the age of puberty, once a child has reached the age of puberty, then he must seek permission every single time. You understand? He must seek permission every single time, whether it is of the times of privacy or not. Like, for example, if a brother wishes to go into his sister's room, it's 5 o'clock in the evening. Does that time fall in any of these 3 times of privacy? No. But should he just walk in? No. It's possible that she's sitting in her relaxed clothing. It's possible that her chest slightly is being exposed, and in front of her brother she would like to wear a shawl on her chest. And it's possible that she's doing some work, which is why she's removed her shawl, so you should not just walk in like that. Similarly, if you're walking into your parents' bedroom, again, you shouldn't just walk in. So, for children, they are allowed to walk in without permission outside of these 3 times. However, when a person has reached the age of puberty, then he has to seek permission every single time. And you can seek permission how? Like, for example, walking in, just knocking at the door. Okay? Or making your presence known. As you're walking towards the door, say aham, aham. Or say salam out loud so that they are aware that you're approaching. You understand? It doesn't mean that as you come to the door, you must knock 3 times and you must say, may I come in? No, this would add difficulty. But the thing is that you can't just walk in. The children, they can walk in. You cannot walk in as an adult. You have to take permission in some way or the other, in whatever manner that is appropriate. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ. Thus does Allah clarify to you the ayats. What does the ayats refer to over here? Commands. And remember, the ayat are both kauni as well as shari'i. And what is an ayah linguistically? What does it mean? A sign, an evidence, a miracle. Isn't it so? So, okay, if we call a kauni ayah, understandable. It's a miracle. It's a sign of Allah's existence. It's a sign of Allah's power, His wisdom, His knowledge, His care, His affection that He has towards His creation. But what about shari'i ayah? Why is it called ayah? What does that reflect? It shows to us about the wisdom of Allah, the knowledge of Allah, that these commands that He has given us, they are for our own benefit. A hukum, a command, is being called an ayah because these commands, these instructions are such that no one besides Allah could have given such commands. No one besides Allah could have ever given this command. Just as no one can create the sun besides Allah, other than Allah, similarly, no one can ever give this command besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because it reflects great knowledge. It reflects great wisdom. That these are the needs of people. These are things that people need. These are their weaknesses. And people must be given their privacy, even inside their houses. And the children, they must be taught these things. Because if they are not taught these things, then what will happen? They will be exposed to such things which are inappropriate for them, which are too great for them to understand. So, these commands, what do they reflect? The great knowledge, wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it shows that none but Allah, no human, no psychologist, no counselor could ever come up with these instructions. Think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us instruction even as to how we should be within our houses. So that our houses become a place of peace for every individual who's living in that house. Because if a person is not granted his privacy in the house, will he be at peace? Will he? No, he cannot be at peace. So these ayat, they show the great wisdom of Allah, that how much He cares for His creation, and He knows the needs of people. He knows about their weaknesses. He knows about their weak points. This is why He has given these commands. And the one who created us is the one who knows us, the one who knows about everything. And He knows the benefits of implementing this command as well. Because we might not consider this command to be very important, but we see that it's an ayah, it's of the ayat, because there are many, many benefits to implementing these commands. Now, to summarize, what do we learn in this ayah? Many, many lessons. First of all, just to summarize, we learn that it is not allowed for children to enter their parents' bedroom without permission at specific times. And as for those who have reached the age of puberty, it is not allowed for them to enter people's private areas without their permission either. What can we learn from this for ourselves? That if someone has become an adult, he should not enter into somebody else's private area without their permission. What can we learn for ourselves from this rule? What do you think? That we should not enter into other people's private areas without their permission. What do we learn? The importance of other people's privacy. Like, for example, if you go to somebody's house, they've invited you, and you go upstairs and check out their bedroom. What kind of furniture have they placed? How big is their washroom? How big is the closet? Is this appropriate? No. If children are not allowed to enter into the private areas of their parents, how can we, even if we're relatives or close friends, how can we walk into other people's private areas without their permission? Opening drawers, opening every door, saying that, oh, I thought it was a washroom, just to see how big is the house and what else do they have in their house. This is not right. Because sometimes people do this a lot. They will open random doors saying that, oh, I thought it was a washroom, just to see, just to get a peek of what's inside. And the guests have been told, the washroom is here, you can use this washroom, but deliberately they will go upstairs to the private bedrooms and use those washrooms just to see how big is the house. What have they put inside the house? Now, if the host has said you can use any washroom, that's different. If they themselves have taken you to the bedroom, that's different. But you cannot just walk in without permission. You cannot just walk in without permission. This is inappropriate. Secondly, we also see in this ayah that a person is not allowed to see the satr of others at these 3 times. The private parts of a person, they must not be exposed to others, especially at these 3 times. Like, for example, if a person has removed their clothes, they're in the bedroom, the servant is not allowed to come and see them. You understand? Similarly, their adult son or even their little child cannot come and see them. Why? Because their satr is being exposed. So if their satr is being exposed in these 3 times, and because of this, these 3 times have been made times of privacy, it shows that it is not allowed for a person to look at the satr of the other outside of these 3 times either. A person must not dress up in a way that exposes his satr. You understand? Like, for example, because you are wearing bed clothes that are short, that may be see-through, that may reveal parts of your body, and because you're in your bedroom at that time, this is why other people are not allowed to come into your bedroom at that time. How can you walk out of your room dressed in those clothes, going in front of everyone, outside of these 3 times then? You understand? Because a person is dressed up in that way. This is why these times are made times of privacy. This shows that otherwise a person must not walk around in such clothes before others. Because if that was not the case, then these 3 times would not be made times of privacy. Do you understand? Then we also learn from this ayah that a person may need to remove his clothes at the 3 times that are mentioned in this ayah, at these 3 times of privacy, but otherwise it is not appropriate. Just because a person is feeling hot, they say, they'll take off their shirt, they'll roll up their pants all the way up to their knees, for example, a girl. This is not appropriate. Because these 3 times are kept exclusively for a person to remove their clothes, to wear short clothes. However, other than these 3 times, it is not appropriate. A person must dress up in a way that is appropriate, especially when he is amongst others. Then we also see that there are 3 times of privacy, and if children are not allowed to come in, then other people, meaning adults, even they are not allowed to come in at these 3 times. If children are not allowed, then adults are also not allowed. Another very important thing that we learn is that when a person wears full clothing, appropriate clothing outside, because sometimes what happens, for example, women, when they walk outside the house, they will wear appropriate clothes, they will wear hijab, everything. But inside the house, they don't care about the kind of clothes they're wearing. And especially in certain cultures, especially women, they don't really care. They will walk around with their necks exposed, with their backs exposed, with half of their legs being exposed. Okay, you might say that it's not really included in the satar. Your satar is from the navel to the knee, alright. But there's something known as being appropriate. So, in the house even, how should a woman dress in front of her adult sons, in front of her daughters? How should she dress up? In a manner that is appropriate. Similarly, how should a girl dress up in front of her brother? In a manner that is appropriate. Because we see only 3 times have been given for privacy. Other than that, you should dress up in a way, you should behave in a way that others don't feel awkward and you don't feel awkward either. You understand? So even within the house, if you have your adult children living with you, even if you have little children, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, don't think, oh, they're only children. No. Dress appropriately. Dress in a manner that is appropriate. Cover your body. Wear decent clothes. Because sometimes it leads to many wrong things as well. Like, for example, between brothers and sisters. It could lead to very inappropriate things. I remember recently somebody was telling me that somebody had called, to get some counseling, basically, a mother. She said that she had a 4-year-old daughter, and her husband's brother, he got divorced or something. So basically, his son, who was about 16 years old, he had nowhere to go. Because the parents had split up, or the mother had died, or something like that. So basically, the son was left on his own. So the uncle said, okay, you can come and stay with me. So he had the son live with him. Now, he had a daughter who's 4 years old. And now he has a nephew who's living in the same house, a 16-year-old. And between these children, that 16-year-old, the way he sexually assaulted, his cousin, was something that the mother could not get over. He sexually assaulted the 4-year-old girl. We think cousins, brothers and sisters. How can something wrong happen? Nothing wrong can happen. This is what we feel, right? But the fact is that even amongst cousins, even amongst siblings, shaitan is there. He can arouse such feelings that are inappropriate. He can cause people to do things that are improper. So it is our responsibility that we must dress in an appropriate way. We must dress children in an appropriate way. Just because she's a 4-year-old girl does not mean she should be wearing a tank top and a very small shorts all the time. With her legs being exposed, her upper body being exposed, this is not appropriate. Because sometimes we think, oh, only children. But we see that it begins at this age. If she has become so used to exposing her body at this point, in front of her brothers, in front of her father, in front of her uncles and her male cousins, when she becomes older, where will her haya come from? So it's extremely important that we take care of these things even inside the house. That we dress appropriately, we dress our children appropriately. And even between brothers and sisters, there should be some sort of haya. There should be some sort of haya. Because sometimes sisters, what do they think? He's only my brother. And they will not be wearing appropriate clothes. I remember my father once mentioned to me about my mother, that he said that when they got married, he never saw my mother walk in front of her father without her shawl. Without her shawl covering her. And basically he was teaching us that, you've become older, so you should be covering yourself. Yes, you're wearing clothes, however, you should be wearing a shawl around yourself. I never saw your mother doing anything against this, so you should also be doing the same thing. It's a part of haya. So just because he's your brother, doesn't mean you don't need to dress up appropriately. You do. Similarly with your father, similarly with your uncles. And obviously cousins are non-mahram. So proper hijab must be observed before them. So these were some of the commands that we learned from this ayah. More commands are being given in the following ayah. And they are that وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمْ, and when the children among you, they reach al-huluma, the puberty. Al-atfal is a plural of طفل. And طفل is used for a child, and it includes both male as well as female. And طفل literally means to have a very soft body, to be very fragile, to be very delicate. And if you look at little children, their bodies are very soft. Isn't it so? If you look at their feet, they're so soft. And as soon as they, become older, what happens? All those nice soft feet, they become so hard and tough. Isn't it? Those same soft hands, they become so hard and tough. So, وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمُ الْحُلُمَ, when the children among you, they reach the age of puberty. Among you refers to the ahrar, the free ones. Which children are these? Those children who were taught to seek permission when entering their parents' private bedrooms at 3 times of privacy. At the 3 times of privacy, the children were to seek permission. Outside of those 3 times, they could walk in. They could walk in with or without permission. Without permission. Right? But now when these same children, when they become adults, when they hit puberty, then what should they do? فَلْيَسْتَأْذِنُوا, then they should also seek permission. When? When entering the private bedrooms, any time of the day. Any time. Before, they were only to seek permission at the 3 times of privacy. But now, they are to seek permission every time they wish to enter. فَلْيَسْتَأْذِنُوا, then they should seek permission. كَمَا, just as إِسْتَأْذَنَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, just as those people before them also sought permission. Which people? Meaning those who reached puberty before them. Those who are older than them. So for example, the big brother, he seeks permission, but his younger sister does not seek permission. Why? Because she has not yet reached the age of puberty. But once she hits puberty, what does she have to do? Follow the footsteps of her brother. She also has to seek permission. فَلْيَسْتَأْذِنُوا كَمَا اسْتَأْذَنَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ, thus does Allah clarify to you His ayat. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ, and Allah is knowing, and He is also wise. Why are these 2 attributes mentioned over here? Because He knows His servants inside out. He knows what they need. He knows about their affairs. He knows about their weaknesses. This is why He has given this command. And Hakim, that He is Dhul Hukm, Dhul Hikmah, He is the possessor of judgment, and He is also the possessor of wisdom. And whatever command He gives is based on His wisdom. Wallahu alimun hakim. So what do we learn in this ayah? That when the children who have reached puberty, when they enter the house, or when they enter the private bedrooms, what do they need to do? Seek permission. How will they have to seek permission? Just as we learned earlier in ayah number 27, that يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَدْخُلُوا بُيُوتًا غَيْرَ بُيُوتِكُمْ حَتَّى تَسْتَأْنِسُوا وَتُسَلِّمُوا عَلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. They will begin to seek permission in that manner, especially when entering the house. Now, think about yourself. Put yourself in this position, because only when we relate it with ourselves, then we'll be able to understand, and then we'll be able to implement. Think about yourself. When you go home, you live with your parents and your siblings, your brothers and your sisters, perhaps your grandparents, they all live in the same house. When you enter the house, what should you do? You have the keys. Should you ring the bell? No. What do you have to do? Unlock the door, and as you walk in, say salam out loud. Say salam out loud. Why? So that your presence is felt. It is known by the people. And this is especially important for boys. Especially important for boys, for the men of the house. Because it's possible that the brother walks in, the sister is working in the kitchen, she's not dressed in a manner that she would feel comfortable in front of her brother. So especially for boys, this is necessary, that when they walk in, they must seek permission, they must make their presence be known. Now this is when entering the house. Now suppose you want to go to your brother's bedroom. What will you have to do? Can you just walk in? No. You have to knock. You have to, especially if the door is closed, you can't just open the door and walk in, no matter how urgent the situation may be. It's possible that there's a phone call. Don't just open the door and rush in. This is inappropriate. What will you do? Knock, especially if the door is closed. If the door is open, make your presence known as you come in. Say, can I come in? What's going on? Are you okay? Whatever you have to do. So this is how it should be. And this is for all adults. All those people who have reached the age of puberty and beyond. So whether someone is 13 or someone is 15 or someone is 25 or someone is 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, it doesn't matter. Now it's however old a person is. Now, we see that, just a side note, that if the children are not allowed to look at the satr of their parents, their own parents, if siblings are not allowed to look at the satr of one another, the private parts of one another, the parts of the body that must be covered, if they are not allowed to look at one another in this way, then how can we allow our children to watch the satr of others on the television? And we turn the television on ourselves for them. Many, many times I have seen that just to keep the children busy, what will people do? Turn the TV on. Turn the TV on, and all the children are sitting over there. And many times people don't care what's coming on the TV, what children are watching, what they're thinking, what's going on in their minds, what they're learning, how they're behaving as a result of that. And we think, oh, it's cartoons. And cartoons are harmless. No, they're not harmless anymore. They're quite harmful. The kind of words that are used, the kind of figures that are made, the way the parts of the bodies are enhanced and how they're made to look so obvious, this is all inappropriate. So we should be very, very careful that if children are not allowed to see their parents, they're not allowed to see their siblings, how can they see others? How is it possible? So this is very, very important that we must keep a check on what our children are watching, what they're looking at, what they're reading, what they're thinking about, what they're talking about. Because typically what happens, if, for example, there's a get-together, families have gotten together, friends have gotten together, women are in one area, the men are in one area, and the children, they are in another area. And they're left completely unattended, with a television, with perhaps some video games, with perhaps a computer, and no one is keeping a check on the children. Thinking, they're innocent, what can they do? But remember that shaitan, he comes to the children a lot. A lot. Because that is the time when he can catch them. And remember, لَأَحْتَنِكَنَّ ذُرِّيَّتَهُ وَشَارِكُمْ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. Shaitan especially targets the children. So this is why we must begin to do this tarbiyah from a very early age, from inside the house. And it's our obligation that we must make sure our children are not watching things that are inappropriate, they're not talking about things that are inappropriate either. Because many times parents are oblivious. They're completely oblivious to what the children are doing. Thinking, oh, we don't understand these things. These children of this day and age, they're too clever, they're too intelligent, they're too smart for us. Regardless, they're human beings. You have to become more active. You have to learn yourself. I remember one of my friends, she was not allowed to read any book unless her mother read it. And this was until we reached high school. After that it was okay. But until that point, she was not allowed to read any book even unless her mother read the book. She was not allowed to watch any movie unless her mother approved of it. She was not allowed. We think this is too strict. This is not giving children their freedom. But we see that it is our obligation that we must provide proper education and training to our children from a very, very young age. Because you see in the previous ayah, the command was given to who? To the children directly? No, it was given to the parents. Because they are responsible. They are going to be held accountable. And whatever children do, whatever mistakes they make, whatever wrong things they do, who is held responsible for it? It's the parents. Now, it's another thing that the parents, they try their best. They do their best. They provide the best. They take care of the child, but still somehow or the other, the child has bad friends, bad influence, and because of that, he's completely out of their hands. So that's another case. However, every parent must be very, very proactive. Proactive. Know about what your children are watching at school, what they're reading, what they're learning about, what they're talking to with their friends. Be aware of all of these things. And sometimes some parents have this habit of spying on their children. checking out these things behind their backs. Don't do it behind their backs. Do it with them, in front of them, so that they trust you. And you show to them that you trust them as well. There should be this level of confidence between parents and children. So this is something that we must take care of. Now let's listen to the recitation and then we'll continue the ayat.
Yeah.
Some scholars have also said that the second ayat that we learned, it is in particular about boys. This is particularly instruction for who? For boys. Because typically the place of the women is where? Inside the house. Isn't it so? And men generally, they're outside the house, whether they're working or doing whatever. Like for example, compared to how much your father is outside, your mother is more inside the house. Because she has to cook and she has to look after the children, and your father is more outside. Similarly, maybe compared to you, your brother is out more. You have a curfew and perhaps he also has one, but it ends later compared to yours, right? So, the boys are especially being taught that when they enter the house, whether their sister is in the house, or their mother is in the house, or their grandmother is in the house, or their daughter is in the house, they must walk in, taking permission, meaning making their presence known, so that nothing awkward happens. They don't see something awkward, and other people also don't feel awkward. But this teaches us a very important lesson as well, that when people are living in a joint family system, when people are living with their in-laws, it's not the ideal situation. However, if, for example, if such is the case, for whatever reason, then this rule must be applied and it must be remembered. It must be applied. Because if, for example, the father-in-law walks into his son's bedroom and the wife is there, it's very awkward for him or for her. And especially if the brother-in-law is living, then he has to be very, very careful. Very careful. Then he must seek permission. Not just make his presence known, however, he must seek permission before coming in. We see how the children are taught gradually that when they're younger, there are 3 times of privacy. And at that time, they must seek permission. Other than that, they're allowed to come. And then as they grow older, then those 3 times of privacy are expanded for them. They're increased for them. So see how gradually children are taught. And this teaches us a very important lesson that whenever we're teaching children something, how should we teach? Gradually. Like for example, I remember when we were growing up, when children are 7 years of age, then they should be taught how to pray. And when they're 10, it should be made sure that the children are praying 5 times a day. So for example, when we turned 7, we were told we have to start praying this one particular salah regularly. That's something that we have to pray. When we turned 8, okay, now increase 1 more. Turn 9, okay, increase 2 more. 4. And now when you turn 10, all 5 you have to pray. So gradually when you build it up, it's easier. And when all of a sudden one day you're like, you have to pray 5 times a day. It's very difficult for children. They're not used to it. So build gradually. Anything you want to teach your children, build gradually and start from a very, very young age. Don't think they're too young. What do they understand? Like for example, if a child is 7 years old, how can a child have khushu' in salah? Don't think like that. No. It's an obligation on them. Start gradually. Eventually, whatever is necessary will come. Also, we see that we argue a lot for different people's rights, women's rights, animals' rights, so on and so forth. And these are children's rights. That they should be allowed to keep their innocence until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them. That until they reach the age of puberty, they must not see something even that is inappropriate for them, even inside the house. Because otherwise, it's going to take their innocence away from them. And if children are exposed to such things within the house, then it may lead to some psychological disorders, or it could make them unsettled emotionally, mentally, and it could lead to severe problems in the future. So it's very, very important that children should be granted this right of theirs. That they should be allowed to remain children. They should be allowed to remain innocent, and their innocence, their childhood is not snatched away from them. Because if we take it away from them, this is injustice towards children. Let's listen to the recitation.
Yeah.